Well, we want to welcome you to Vespers this evening, and I think it should be an interesting one. You know, when you read our church papers and watch satellite programs, they talk about these centers of influence. And, we can be very thankful that we've actually had a center of influence here in this church for, they're likely going to tell you how many years. I wouldn't know that long before I ever got here. Now, some of these centers of influence do different things. I was just watching a program last night where they have them come and they just do craft things, They paint and they do whatever. Well, our center of influence didn't do that, but they did something that was perhaps likely a little more helpful to the community. So I hope you enjoy the program tonight. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we're glad to be able to gather in your sanctuary at the close of the Sabbath. We ask for one lingering blessing to take with us throughout the week. We're so thankful that for many years now, this church has been a light in the community and serving it through our community services. We pray you bless those who take part in the program tonight. They might be able to inspire us to continue to witness in our spheres for Jesus' sake. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Well, good morning. Good morning. It's good evening. I'm so used to saying good morning. Excuse me. And I am really pleased because tonight I have got somebody that's going to help me with just about everything. And I want to say thank you. Oh. I've got this. Am I not loud enough?
Not very loud.
Not very loud. There I am now. There, I really am. So I want to thank some people this morning, or this evening, I should say, who've been helping me for a long time. And I see down there now Gay Mentes, and I want to thank you. She was the one that when I would tell her the miracles, she said, well, we've got to have a book. We've got to put a book out. So then I was thinking, okay, but I don't know about doing a book. So she kept after me all the time. So I started writing things down and trying to make a story out of it, like it's something that would interest somebody. And I'm thinking to myself, well, now, it's not that I could put it down on paper. I'm not one for putting things on paper. And as you all know by now, I'm a talker. I'm not a writer or a printer. I'm a talker. And so I want to thank Gay for that. And Sam here. Now, I don't know anything about PowerPoint and all that, but she volunteered for that. And so I'm sure glad that she has. And then Larry, good old Larry up there taking the pictures that he's going to be showing, or is going to be showing, from the secretary says anyway. So what I am going to say next, and I try not to be crying, is that none of this is for my glory. It's all God. So my favorite song is, "To God be the glory, great things he hath done." And that's exactly what has been going on for a few years. And so I think before I get into too much of the miracles, I think I thought maybe there'd be more strangers here that maybe don't know who I am, but I guess I was wrong there. I think pretty well everybody knows who I am. So I need to be giving a little bit of history before, as it go into where it was that I took over community services. So, of course, the very first thing, I came out from Saskatchewan in 1969. And so my husband and I, and 2 children. And then I started work at Stedman's. Now this goes back 1961, or 69 rather. And so it was at Stedman's, and then I went down to Cooper's in 71. So that's where I got my training really on computers, cashiering, and sign making, and you name it. And then that is where we met Joe and Shirley Tateran, because they were janitors. And at that time, it was called, just a minute, I gotta find, I didn't write it down. Not Value Village, Shoppers Village. That's what that mall was called. And now it, of course, is Highway 33. So I was really happy at being here. I just love this country and all the trees and the mountains and the water and everything else. So as I was meeting Joe and Shirley and the family and asking questions of what it is that I saw in the Bible, what I believed to be right, and anytime I'd go over to Joe and Shirley's and ask about this and ask about this, what do you believe? And so it was exactly what it was that I felt was right. So that was when I would come to the church. And at that time, I took an interest in what, and I don't know that they're here right now. We have, well, the first thing that I really want to say to, and I think Fred was talking about this, people will forget what you say. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. And that's what I felt all the time, is those people really didn't know anything about our church at that time. Because, you know, I'm talking 50 years ago. I think it's 50 years ago. And so I really want to give God the glory for everything that he has done, everything that he did. And so I think that's about it with my history. So the next picture is where we have the Dorcas ladies. Now you can see up there where we have got Cherry Gertson and Joan Hathaway working in the Dorcas. And shortly after that was when it was changed to Community Services. Now that was when I got the logo. And this goes back so far, I don't know what the date was, but it was changed to Community Services, Adventist Community Services. And my friend Morris Boyarchuk put that logo onto a piece of plywood and cut it out and put it up for me above the door down there. And that is when I started then, was when it was Community Services and not Dorcas. And then right after that, I took over for Mary Dolk. Now, how many of you remember all these names? Yeah, the Duncans do. And she had a stroke, so she had to move to Alberta with her family. And then I had Norm and Fran Howe, now who people knew the Howes, Pastor Howe, yes. And so that is when I took over. And I had those people working, some in the men usually did the greeting and the bringing the people in, and of course the girls were on the computer at that time. We had the little menu recipe card is where we had the client's name on and what they got. There was no computer at the very first of that. So then our next thing that we had, which was really surprised, we had a shipment that would go to Hope. And this was the first one, I think, of how many times. Oh, now that's the picture of, that's who we had for a staff way back then. Of course, that was in the Ukrainian chapel. That's the amount of people that we had at that time. And so we did, there was a trailer, a truck, and the trailer that we had, Joe Kopiniak's truck and trailer we had loaded, and it was to go to Zaire. And it was going to go into a school. So as you can see there, we have some volunteers working and loading that truck. And that was the old highway. That wasn't the connector. It was the old highway down there. So we had bicycles and shovels and garden supplies and school supplies, very small compared to the shipments that we do now. Did a few years ago. This was to a school in Zaire. Our next shipment got even bigger. We were very proud of what we had collected and how we had packed it. And it was at that time when I became more knowledgeable of what it was expected in community services and what the people needed in this city. And we had a lot of people, as you can see, that were packing and sorting. And I have pictures coming up in a few minutes of the people that we had, anywhere from 45 to 50 to 60 people at a time working what is now the fellowship room. So it was packing and sorting and taking new clothes out, just all kinds of things we were sorting through. And then it was around there when ADRA decided that they couldn't afford this shipping clothing anymore. And that is when we turned it mostly into helping people in the community. So as we were carrying different things, furniture started up, and I see where Larry in here, Larry is still in that business of moving furniture. And I think that's just awesome. Well, our next big client was very different. And J.P. Squire, who was the courier, with the courier, did a story on this. And the guy's name was John. John and his wife were both deaf. The children were able to hear quite fine. And he had trouble getting a job because how could he hear what the person was wanting? How would they know what he was saying? He did sign language, but that never helped me any of what it is that they needed. I just let them go through the center. And they had, J.P. Squire said that they had been clients in the Seventh-day Adventist Community Services. And the picture that they show here of John and myself was taken January the 31st, 1999. Now, somebody anonymously had given $1,000 for community services to be used for children that were in need. And I thought, now, anybody needs that would be John and his wife would need to have that phone. The cost of the phone, mind you, the donation was $1,000. The cost of the phone was $999.99. So that this is one of our big first stories. And they were so glad to have that. And J.P. Squire wrote down here, community service is one of the best kept secrets in all of Kelowna, said Davis. She and her 45 volunteers assisted more than 3,000 needy people last year with clothing, furniture, and food. One group of women produced 45 quilts, which were handed out to the poor. The Highway 33 Church is also one of the biggest contributors to Operation Hope, the largest charity-driven collector of distribution of used clothing in the world. So, like I said, at this time I sure realized what all was happening. It wasn't just clothing that the people needed. They needed the bedding and the dishes, and there's all kinds. This is where the miracles come into place. And it's not going to be hard for you to realize what kind of a miracle these were. And, of course, everybody was thanking us, thanks for doing this and thanks for doing that. And I'd say it's not us, it's God that does it. And the relationship that we had with some of the clients were really good. And as you maybe know the stories, there is a few of the girls that I adopted, not by writing, handwritten adoption, but I took them under my wing and everybody else's wing. And that was where it was really good when these clients would come to help. They'd volunteer and they knew where everything was. So it was really good having that. So we would put things down. There was one time I tell this to Donna Rose quite often, to put it in a book, because it's amazing what we'll see happen when you write down what the needs are. So every morning when we had prayer, we would put down what it was that we needed and what the clients would like, and I put it in. And so the one day there was somebody needed some pots and pans. Well, that's really hard. How many people just have pots and pans sitting around in the house that they don't need? So the chances of having pots and pans were pretty slim. So I had put down on the book, there's the name, their address, their phone number, that they needed pots and pans. Well, of course, Tuesday morning, sometimes Monday morning is when a lot of things would be dropped off at the center. And this one day, there was a whole 2 boxes. What looked to be like diamonds just sparkling in the sun. And I realized they were Pyrex pots and pans, a whole set of Pyrex pots and pans. So needless to say, without even knowing who dropped that off, but knew who it is that wanted it, and that's where one of the miracles stepped in. And just at that moment was when I realized that I was not in charge, that the Lord was in charge. It certainly was nothing to do with it. I was just an instrument. And I really was happy with it, being an instrument. And then we'd have this prayer in the morning. We'd say, you know what, we need socks. We need children's socks and we need men's socks. And so the next day when came in, there was 4 bags of socks, garbage bags of socks outside the door. Where they came from, I have no idea. No idea. Nobody would leave their name there, I guess, with what they were volunteering. So then, the next story is 2 kitchen chairs. I've got lots of stories here. 2 kitchen chairs. We opened one Tuesday morning, and the girl came into the center needing 2 kitchen chairs. As I said to her, as I said to a lot of people, they may be donated today, maybe tomorrow, who knows? So we'll just put it on the list. So there was where the chairs did come in about 5 minutes later. 2 chairs, no more, no less, just 2 chairs. And that's just the start of the miracles that we saw. And then once people found out and realized that they could get just not everything that they asked for, but pretty close, then it would be, guess what would be next? Do you happen to know anybody that has a car that they don't need? Or you have a truck? Would you have that on your list? Well, the one day we did have a car come in, donated from one of our church members. So I thought to myself, who's going to get this car? I hadn't put their name on any list, but who should get a car? So the girl that still was coming to community services, Danielle got that car because she was walking all the way from out by the airport to get here to volunteer for community services. And as of about 5 weeks ago, the car is still running. Yeah. So the phone call came in one day. The question was, do you have anybody there that needs a whole house full of furniture? Well, how many people, the pastor, it wasn't one of our pastors that needed a household full of furniture, but this person had a house full of furniture to give. And somebody had just found out that somebody needed furniture. So a few days later, I had 3 trucks to go over to the house that was donating the furniture and took it to the people that needed it. So right there was where we did not have any leftovers or anything like that. We just needed to have a house full of furniture, and that's what the people got. It didn't cost us a cent, and it didn't cost them a cent. The next morning, they had a house full of furniture. Now, just when I think of the elevator that we have now, there was one time somebody had phoned that they had a lift chair. One of those kinds that you can sit on it and goes up the stairs or down the stairs. And I thought, hey, I said to Pastor Hawes, we should get that. Then we wouldn't have to have an elevator. We just go up the stairs. This was ages ago. It was before we even thought of elevator. And then there was a lady phoned, and she needed a lift chair. So I contacted the one that was donating it, and I said, hey, could somebody come to your house and get that chair? And so the lady did. She needed a chair, and she went over and got that lift chair. And those are very expensive now, you realized. And then one morning, I had a phone call from a sweet little lady in a mobile home. And she was living on a pension, and I don't know how people make a go of it, needing a stove or anything when they only have a pension. And then I didn't realize that the stove would be a smaller size stove, because, a mobile home, little house is not very big. So she said to me, well, I like this stove. And so, okay, I'll just have to put this down on my needs list. And so she said to me, well, I've got a fridge, and it's got a black front. So it would be nice if the stove had a black front. And I thought, oh my goodness, I had never heard of anything. Well, chances of that happening, Kathleen, I just don't think that would be it. But hey, it's not me that's making the decisions. It's not me that's figuring out if I got something that's going to work for her. So the next day, I had a phone call that was from Kathleen, had come in a few days before. Well, I had a phone call one Monday, and excuse me, everybody is having this problem now. And this lady said to me, I live out here in Winfield, and I've got a stove to donate, but what I did on Saturday or Friday, I put in the paper that I had this stove for sale. And she said, and now the weekend's gone by, And she said, I will give you the stove donated for you. Because people were realizing we were not charging for furniture. We were not charging for delivery. And they liked it. They liked it. They were donating something to somebody that was in need. So our dear little Ed Gallant, I sent him out to that house in Winfield to get the stove. And so Ed delivered it. I phoned Kathleen. I said, Ed's bringing over the stove. Well, about 15 minutes later, Kathleen phoned and she was crying. It had a black front. The stove had a black front. I just, that to me is just priceless. When that happens, now, as you can see, I was just an instrument. All this was God. And then we get into patio tables and chairs. Now you think, now why on earth is this a necessity? Well, if you don't have air conditioning in your house, and you can sit out and have your meal on a patio table and chairs, then that's what you need. You really need. So when people ask, and the Lord is thinking about this, okay, you'll receive. And this gentleman needed a patio table and chairs. About 1 hour later, someone called in, donating a table and 6 chairs and an umbrella. The gentleman brought the table and 6 chairs, but was sorry that the chairs didn't have cushions. 2 days later, someone brought in 2 cushions. They matched and fit exactly. And you see, God's timing is perfect, right? So Tuesday morning, I'm talking Tuesday morning a lot because when we first opened up, Tuesday service being open was enough time. But God told that we needed to have Wednesday. We were having so many people coming in. Right, Margaret? We had an extra day. So for us, who sorted and packed and everything, 3 days is what it took. And so this is where it had to be 3 days of the operation. Now, the next phone call, I shouldn't say the next, I had phone calls all the time, but this is one that I marked down as being really good. A Tuesday morning, phone call came in with a request. She needed a table and chairs and a couch and a bed and a dresser. Now, 15 minutes later, Donna Lemke came in. And guess what Donna Lemke had on her truck? From the night before, she had packed the truck, brought it in, said to me, now where do you want this furniture that I've got here? Where do you want that to go? And I said, well, it would be good if you could just take it over to these people that need it. And then we don't have to unload it or anything. They can help you unload it. So I phoned them and said, what it is you needed is on the way. It's already going down. No problem. Donna took it over there, unloaded. They were some happy people, surprised. And they even had, Donna even had the sheets to go on the bed for these people. Now I'll get into my sweet little Mary over there, our sweet little Ed, our head trucker, Ed Gallant. Now I'll tell you, there'd be times that Mary would call me and say, do you know where Ed is? Like, how do I know? I'd maybe send him out, but I guess he was back in. But he'd go out driving, and he'd see things at the side of the road like so many people do, just put their furniture or anything out on the side of the road just for anybody to pick up and take away, saves them driving to the dump. So this is what Ed would do. He would pick everything up, everything that was in the side of the road. Now, in the olden days, right over here at the next piece of property, when there was a house there was also a garage. And every time Ed would pick anything up, he'd take it to that garage and put it in there, because it would maybe be all right for packing for if we were going to do any big deliveries, big orders, container orders. So next week, you'll see the container story. So Ed would have on there, he would have a walker and a bathtub and everything that might be working right for people that were handicapped or anything. And a few weeks later, I had received a call from somebody in the senior home right over here. And there was a lady needed to have a motorized chair. Now, this is really the beautiful ones that you can sit in. It lays back, lifts you up, right too, so that you can stand up and get out of the chair. Now, that was what Ed had. How on earth he got that, because it has a motor in the bottom. How on earth he got that in that truck to take over and put it in that garage, I don't know. But always it would be interesting. It was interesting to go into that garage and see all these things that Ed had just picked up. And this rest home, you'll hear more about it tomorrow. No, yeah, tomorrow. Now, I've got plenty of time going on here, but I'd like to tell you this fascinating story, Fernbrae. And so this is what I've titled it, is a Fernbrae Rest Home. Story happened after we had shipped the hospital beds overseas. Now, this is next week's story. When there was one day, Larry came to me and said, now, I know somewhere where they have a hospital bed. Do you want me to pick it up and bring it? And I said, well, I don't think that I need it right now, but, well, put it in the container. So that's what he was going to do, was going to go to put it in the container, pick it up and put it there. So when I opened the door to have the clients come in, we called them clients, the guests, I guess, really, there was a lady came in. I had met her before when all of the when all of the churches would get together. We'd have meetings and to discuss who all we were giving hampers out to at Christmas time, and if there was any of our church that was having a problem. And this lady had belonged to the church over on, I can't remember the road now. Pardon me. Now, this is what the stroke does, it's just in one ear and out the other. And so anyway, she said to me that she was over at Fernbrae and seen this client, who had been a client of ours. We had served him before. But he needed to have a hospital bed. And, of course, he could not afford a hospital bed. How many people did know of a hospital bed that could be for free? And just at that moment, I said to her, I said, we didn't have one, but I know where there's one right now. I'll just phone my trucker, Larry. So I phoned Larry. I said, don't bother putting that hospital bed in the container. Take it over to Fernbrae. And that's what he did. Took it over to Fernbrae. And they just moved that man into the bed, and that was that. I said to her, she said, couldn't believe that this was like almost immediately it had happened. And it was just a phone call away. Sometimes all it takes, just a phone call away. So that man was very happy. Well, I said to her that day, the Lord has met your need, and you didn't even know about it, and neither did I. The Lord never just keeps sending things, blessings in regardless. Thank you, Lord. All I need to say is really I had nothing to do with this. Just to tell how the Lord has blessed us all. One story or another that we have. Miracles of community services. I never get tired of talking about this, all the miracles, but I guess there's going to come a time when I need to stop talking. Okay, there is a rest home over across the way here, and the manager was called Karen, and she needed a request of a reclining lift chair for a patient. Now, I was talking about a lift chair before. This was a different one. This is a lift chair. Now, the person that needed was Nicole Kostrowski, Miss Canada International. Who remembers at the time that we had, because Sri Lanka had gone at Christmas, had gone through that tsunami? This is going to be a story for next week of how we shipped what it was that Nicole Kostrowski wanted to ship overseas to Sri Lanka through ADRA Canada. So I went out to the shed again, and there was Ed with these supplies and with all these things to go. There was another lift chair, so he just took it over to that other rest home. No problem. No problem. Now, this is where I'm going to take a little while to talk about this one, because this is a marvelous thing. Our big truck miracle is what it's called. And I think I'll read this instead of making so many mistakes. We at ADRA and Adventist Community Services would hold conventions in different cities across Canada, where all the community services leaders would be able to ask and report on the operation of their center. We would talk about new and improved ways of operation of the center. And I would always make the statement how I needed a man with a truck. And what woman doesn't need a man with a truck? But community services needed a man with a truck. And I had a phone call one day. No, this is when I was talking the improvement, how I needed a man with a truck. And I would tell people, I really think I'm going to put an ad in the newspaper for a man with truck, needed man with truck, send picture of truck. And they all got the same response as what you have got. Now, how could this woman put an ad in the paper, needed a man with truck, send picture of truck? Would you believe? One morning, I got a phone call from a gentleman. And this is what he's going to show us, the next picture. Now, there is a man with a truck. Now, he had said, I've got a new truck, and I've just got it painted. It just had read in the newspaper where you needed a man with a truck. And I would like to volunteer for this job. His name was Frank. And I said, okay, can you bring over the truck? What have I got to lose? Bring over the truck. Then I said to the volunteers, you want to come back out and look at this truck? It is a beautiful truck, painted beautiful. And so we put Frank to work with this beautiful truck. It was a big truck, as you can see, a moving truck. In fact, that's the house that was my house, and I had him move me over to where I am now. And that's about 10 years ago, I guess. Anyway, I got the information from him, the phone number, his address, and everything else. Because I had a job excuse me, I had a job for him to do. And this was a beautiful dream that I had. And how could I say, what would I say when he said that he wanted to help? I'd say, well, welcome. And then I put him to work. Because at that time we were going down to Summerland. And Ed was coming back. We were bringing back clothing that thrift shop did not need. And we had the need for it to be going out to shipping. So Ed would come back home with his little truck full of bags of clothing. Now, not only did he have it at the back of the truck, he had it beside him in the truck, right up to the door. He had it under his knees and over on that side. It was strictly Ed driving the truck. And that just cracked me right up. How on earth, Ed, you don't know how dangerous that is. You cannot keep doing that, Ed. Well, no, I'm fine. I've got the hands on the steering wheel and I got the brakes and I can do this. He could do anything. That man could move a washer and a dryer into the truck, out of the truck. The size of him, and he still could do that. So what did we do? Frank went down with this big truck to pick up the bags of clothes. And I don't know how many of you remember that stairs out there that goes out from the sanctuary or from the hallway is where Ed would drop the bags off, but so did Frank. And we would come in the morning and there would be a whole bunch of bags sitting out there that had come in from Summerland or Peachland, I guess it was Summerland. So this is the story of the truck. I said to Pastor Fox, no, not Fox, Pastor Hawes, I said, how come I never put an ad in the paper? Why would I put an ad in the paper? Well, he said, I guess Frank saw the ad in the paper. That to me is hard to believe. The pastor said, God put it in the paper, in the newspaper. Frank worked for us for a few months. He's moving, and he got going on his moving furniture. So all those miracles, I think the Lord would like me to have said what has gone on. I'll never ever regret having taken over 25 years of volunteering with Adventist Community Services. It was a miracle. Every day was a miracle. There was always something going on, and when it was time for sorting through the clothes and the packing that we had in there, we had, as you can see, down here in the front pews, I got pictures of all the volunteers. We had 45, sometimes 50 volunteers, and there were couples like Don and Edna Gadd, the Peters, Corny and Ida Peters. We had lots of pairs that was just make it unbelievable. The miracles that we have back there and the love that was shown. And I've got picture here, all kinds of pictures. You can pick out of those the pictures of the groups here. And maybe guess, I've got a whole list of the addresses and the phone numbers. And if you want to come and look at that, you can take a picture if you want. Take the picture with you. But I want to tell you now that during the 25 years of volunteering, and of course adopting some people sometimes is what I would do, we'd have Christmas dinners, trimmings for the Christmas gifts, and gifts for the kids, Thanksgiving dinner, Easter dinners. We entertained the children with programs to correspond with the event. These items were fascinating, and all the volunteers enjoyed them. All the guests and everybody was just one big happy family here at times. We also educated the clients with programs such as how to budget your groceries, explaining such as the best ways for $1, how you could use vinegar to wash the windows instead of window cleaner. We had ladies giving classes which were all well received. Vegetarian cooking classes. We had started this, remember when Hine Road School was closed, that road over on Hine Road? There was lots of kids that went there at one time, and then they got shifted over to Valley View School there. And we had meals prepared and burgers, which they were fascinated. And of course, they didn't know that they weren't burgers, like what they were thinking of having burgers. So we would prepare the meal, but potatoes and gravy and vegetables, and the gravy would go, and give them the quantity that they needed to make it up themselves, for the mothers or fathers to make the meals themselves. So that's where we spent a few days, a few times over at that house. And now just to think that all those times that I was wanting so badly to have somebody like Bev Haynes, to do all that and to put that together. So we were very happy with all of the volunteers. And all those years that we have had the help with Sleep Country. Now, for any of you who don't know exactly how much, can't even guess how many beds Sleep Country gave us at the time of the forest fire. At the time when we had Jamaicans coming over here to work on the bridge. And those Jamaicans did have nothing. We could give them whatever furniture we had, the beds and every sheets to go with it and the towels to go with it, everything that they would need. And we were really pleased that we could do all that. But all the time, the Sleep Country is just still doing the same thing. It's just marvelous what is happening over there. And when we had, and next week you will hear a lot about Rwanda, Guyana, and Ethiopia. Those were fantastic places for us to put the hospital beds that were donated. And you can see at the front here, we've got a whole pages of a book. Fergie Paul, remember Fergie Paul's poems that she would write all the time? And when we had the awards night, which goes back a few years, I can remember Olga Kuhn getting the 35th year button pin. We gave out those pins that night. And Fergie read the poem. And all I had to do was I told her 2 or 3 things that would have happened during the time, and she made a poem out of the whole thing. Now, there's plenty of copies over there of that poem, and it is awesome. So we got the pictures there and all that. So we have been blessed. We have had baptisms. For anybody who knows, I've got 21 baptisms here. Baptisms of people that worked volunteered in community services. And there's one girl that's always was special to me. She said in her testimony, she came into the Seventh-day Adventist Church to meet Jesus in the basement. So we've had lots of help, and I'm really pleased with what Donna has been doing with all these things that she's got on the go. But I tell you, I still miss community services. I miss all that of what it was that we could do and how we were a blessing to everybody. So I want to thank you for listening to this, and now this is going to give you enough 5 minutes to get over to the school. But next week, 5-6 container stories that I want to show you. So I want to thank you for listening. Now this, like I say, I'm not the speaker I used to be, and I'm certainly not the person that could write anything down and write a book. Sorry, Gay. So I do want to thank you all for coming. So we'll talk to you again, no doubt about it.
Was that interesting, or was that interesting? Thelma has left a legacy that is hard to follow, Thelma. And it's God. She's right. It's God who has used her to be such a blessing to so many people. And, iServe has taken a little different turn. We don't deal so much with the clothing and things like that.
You're still doing furniture, though.
But I vowed I would never deal with furniture like Thelma was doing. But it happens. And, speaking of miracles, it is amazing, because I'll just say these last few words. Just the other day, when I was at Value Village buying things for our bags of love, I met a gentleman. He was loading things into his car, and we started chit-chatting. I said, well, you're buying out Value Village. And he said, well, my children are coming from Jamaica. And I said, well, can you use some help? Of course, I'm in community services. I serve. And he said, oh, yes, my children are coming. I don't have that much stuff in my house, etc. And would you know, Kim handed me a note the other day, just on Thursday, I guess Friday. And it was a lady who said she used to attend the Adventist church, and she said, I'm trying to get rid of some furniture, and I really wanted to go to the Adventist church. And so I connected those two. Tomorrow we're going to look at the furniture, and maybe we'll be able to outfit this man with a few things. Yeah. So Thelma will never do what you do, but what you have done. But God is good, and he continues to bless. Amen. But I have some flowers here. These are from Lorraine Boyarchuk. She insisted that I get some flowers and give them to Thelma at the program. So Thelma.
She told me last night she was going to stand beside me today. To visualize.
She wanted to do that, but she couldn't. So these flowers are from Lorraine, but some of our love is tucked into these flowers too. So this is for you.
See, this is Morris made that, put that together.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these are for you.
Okay. Thank you for me. Thank you. Oh, amen. Okay, so now you can go and hear the children probably at the school. Okay, so thank you.